quorum?
Yeah, they just have.
Just make sure.
Mr. Hildebrand? Can we start with 5? That's a quorum. Three people missing, yes. And Director Singh.
And Director Smith. Is it Robin?
Robin and Barbara and
They've got to be third. Robin is.
yeah, they said they weren't.
And Barb said they weren't coming.
Charlie, you're good with 5. Yeah.
Good morning, directors. How are you this morning? I think we'll call the utility systems committee together. And I'll call the meeting to order. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with the many First Nations communities across our vast regional district. And today we are located on the Thompson-Nicola territory. And we appreciate the partnerships that we have had with the Thompson-Nicola and the respected territory and land on which we gather today. Directors, are there any adoption or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion for the minutes of April the 20th.
Move the recommendation. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Reports, Jamie, are you it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Utility Systems Committee terms of reference. I'm not going to do a presentation on this, but there is a report attached. So just to remind the committee, this goes back to the committee review that was done in June and endorsed by the board in July. And the recommendation for this committee was that it maintained in place, but that the composition be changed to only have committee members appointed who had TNRD operated utility systems within their areas. So what that means is we're maintaining a composition of 8. So it would be 8 electoral area directors, and there happens to be at this point in time at least only 8 electoral areas that have TNRD water systems in it. So the composition would end up being all 8 EA directors on this committee. Any questions? I'll leave it at that.
Steve?
Thank you, Chair. On your report under discussions, on the second line, it says the committees or directors appointed who have TNRD operated utility systems. I know it's nitpicking, but should it not be operating systems? Operated is in the past tense. We're in the future. I know it's nitpicking, so I'd like to just bring that to your attention.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments about the terms of reference? Are you all happy with it? Okay. Then we'll have our motion. Somebody move the recommendation. Thank you. All in favor? Oh, we're gonna get through this meeting in a hurry. Okay, the update is you, Jamie, is it? Or is it Tyrone? Tyrone, go ahead.
Tyrone, I'll take it from here.
Morning. So I'll start with the capital projects update. The agenda will go through our current funding assistance for our projects. Then we'll summary of each of the projects. And then what the future projects are. So there are 7 capital projects that we have funding for right now. So the first one we have is the Black Pines Community Water System. This is the New Build Canada Fund. Second one is water metering through the Federal Gas Tax Strategic Priorities Fund. And then we have our large one, the Pritchard Community Water System Filtration Project under the ISIP Rural and Northern Communities Fund for this. We have Canada Community Building Funds, which was previously the gas tax, for Blue River Community System, which was the chlorination system. That was $129,000 from CCBF. There was also funding from Trans Mountain and operating surplus used for that. We have the Paul Lake Community Wastewater System. That was the board approval back in December for upgrades to our lift station and communications in the area. And then we had multiple water systems where we were from the CCBF, where we're installing automatic transfer switches, as well as some other improvements. Other funding sources, we have a Vavenby water treatment facility. This is for preliminary design on a water treatment plant for Vavenby. And this was all through Canfor and Trans Mountain donations to fund this. So overall, there's our 7 projects, and our grand total is around $9.8 million from the various sources. So I'll start with our Black Pines Community Water System project. This has been ongoing for quite some time. So we have detailed design, and the construction project was tendered in June 2022. And we awarded the contract, or the contract award was approved at the August 18th board meeting. So I've also highlighted our groundwater well here. We have 2 wells on the system. The second one was put in under this project as well. And this is the part of the design over here, where we are actually we have to raise the grade for the project from the existing grade down in this area, about approximately 5 meters up to a kiosk at the top. So it's a fairly significant amount of earthworks on there. We provided notice of award to Bree Contracting, the successful proponent or bidder on this. We did receive 5 bids for this tender period, and they were all compliant bids. And then the recommendation was to award it to Bree as the lowest best value bidder on this. We had a startup meeting with Bree on the 22nd, so 3 days after, between All North, our engineering consultant, the TNRD, and Bree on that. And our construction contract was executed on September 26, 2022. Some work was done prior to that contract being executed. And main reason for that is coming up here. We have a very tight timeline. This has to be done by the end of February, early March for our grant. And so the first time we'll see any work on site is when the contractor mobilizes on the 17th of October, and they'll start their earthworks. Then we will before the freeze up happens, we'll have the pitless adapters, which are the connections to the wells, and then the underslab spools. So these are the piping that come up into the building, and then the connections in between while they're building the grade up as well. That's targeted to be complete by mid-November. The building itself should be complete, and I'm only talking about the structural part of it, by mid-December. And once that's complete, then mechanical and electrical installations will occur during the freezing months, when we typically don't want to do a lot of earthworks. So our completion provided by our contractor and our consultant is February 8th, 2023 for this. And we do have a deadline of March 31st, 2023 for the entire project, including claims and everything else. So it's a fairly tight timeline, and we're on top of this to keep them going. I've thrown up an excerpt from the construction schedule for you to see, but there's a lot goes into this project. And we're tying in to an existing water system at the opposite end of the current source. We're replacing the current source with groundwater And we're bringing in 2 wells to a single pump house. And then conveying that into the distribution system. So we have a crossing of West Side Road to complete, and we're also working in proximity to the Trans Mountain expansion pipeline. So looking forward to this one. I'm really looking forward to this one being completed. So water metering program. So this should be the last time we have this on our capital projects update. So the final portion of this was to update our bylaw, which we completed in November 2021. And we did a brief update on this then. Mock billing is required to be completed for 4 quarters prior to switching over to metered rates for all communities. We have completed them in Q1 for select communities. So those were, I believe, Spence's Bridge, Del Oro, Evergreen, Maple Mission, and perhaps Wallachine. The remaining mock bills communities were sent out in Q2 of 2022. These were late, so you may have some residents that were asking where these were. We did communicate that they would be out in Q2. They came out about 2 months into Q2, and that was a software issue we're working through with the finance department as well. So it's a whole new process to try and do mock billing, and there have been some roadblocks there. Loon Lake remains outstanding. I don't know if you recall when we presented the utility rate amendment bylaw in November, that we did not establish a rate for Loon Lake. It's a challenging one to determine what the utility rate should be, as it's very seasonal, and currently it's set up so the water on or water off fee is 50% of the water on rate to continue to generate enough revenue to operate that system. So there's some work to be done on that, and wintertime and utilities is a great time to look at spreadsheets and crunch numbers. So finally, for the metering program, we continue to encourage all of our users to sign up for Ion Water. This is their window into their water meter. So the water meters, this is my last basically chance to talk about this up here. So the water meters do update every 24 hours with the water volumes and the flows up to a 15-minute interval. And users can see this. It's all cloud data through cellular technology, and users can sign up. We've had really good buy-in every twice a year or so when our Waterworks newsletters go out, and it's starting to stagnate. So we're looking at different options to improve that. So this project is complete, and final claims will be made in Q4 2022. So end of this year, this one will be completely done and off our books. So really happy with how that one's worked out. The Pritchard Community Water System, so the filtration project, we've secured the $4.95 million in grant funding, covering 100% of eligible costs. Detailed design is 95% complete. We have electrical outstanding right now, and some of the engineering required for the optional items are outstanding. But we have a 3D rendering of what the water treatment plant will look like. It's proposed to look like. So we have our entry here, double doors to get our two skids will be put in. Those are our membrane skids here. And then we have a area for a future third train. And then we have a separated chemical room. And then we have our footprint here, which has a clear well underneath to allow for contact time prior to pumping it to the reservoir. And we have mechanical and electrical room separate, as well as a small bathroom in there. So the tendering, we are expecting to tender this next week on the 12th. And then we are intending to bring this to the November 24th board for approval to award that tender. As part of the tendering and the construction package for this project, we will be novating the membrane supply contract. So we went out prior to secure a membrane, the technology, and that's helped with the detailed design of this project. That has to be novated to the successful bidder by the end of 2022. So we're expecting it to happen before the Christmas closure, December 23rd. There's a few more, another slide on this one. We have some optional works in this, so it's been challenging environment with construction and pricing to figure out what we can squeeze into this. So we intentionally went ahead with our grant application with some optional items to complete so that we could account for fluctuations in the market out there. So some of those works would include the Bostock Crescent water main upgrade. This is taking an older 4-inch asbestos concrete main, upgrading it to a 6-inch main to improve hydraulics as well as fire flows. And then the upgrade or the conversion of our current dry well. So we have 2 intakes right now. One's a dry well, a failed dry well, and the other one is a wet well. So the dry well is dry, the wet well has the water coming into it from the river. The intent is to interconnect the two at a lower elevation. Right now, the elevation that they're interconnected is too high for the majority of the season to operate. So interconnect down below and take this very large casing that we have and convert that into a new intake. So this would allow us to eliminate and basically mothball our existing intake, which is from the 70s. So that's one that our fingers are crossed if we'll be able to have enough funding for that one in this project. But we do have 2 alternative options for the intake as well. One of those will be in the tender. And then the second one will be optional work, which we can, once the tender prices come in, we can sort out whether we can afford it or not. So the bid prices and the budget will dictate what is completed on this project. So at the end of the day, our goal is to provide filtered drinking water to the community of Pritchard. And we may have some, we may get the Cadillac model, maybe the Tesla model these days. So yes.
When you have a dry well like that, do you do any fracking?
Sorry, any?
Fracking, try to get water from it from fracking it?
No, so that dry well is, the intent of it was to, or the original intent of that dry well was to keep the water in an enclosed pipe coming through pumps and then being pumped out for access. So all we're intending to do is convert it, basically try and lower that dry well, the base of it, another few meters, which is we're doing some geotech work on right now or tomorrow to determine what the ground's like down there. But if we can lower that to a lower elevation, then we can pipe our current intake in Pritchard, which comes out of South Thompson, directly into this dry well, which will then become a wet well with submersibles. All of our electrical will be backfed from the water plant, so we will no longer have control systems or anything else down on the river, which is within the 200-year floodplain. So that's the intent of it. But as far as fracking or anything like that goes, no, we're not looking for groundwater or anything there right now. So
My assumption is it's just a hold.
it's just what?
It's just like a holding tank.
Just
A holding tank?
yeah, essentially a holding tank. It's a sump where we pump the water from the river. All right, moving on to the Blue River chlorination, and this goes into our CCBF funding. So we awarded a construction contract to Spooner Industrial on March 3rd, 2022. This is shortly before the previous utility committee meeting. This picture up here is of Spooner removing the existing filtration system that was, I don't believe it was ever used from the current building, and that freed up space for us to convert to our chlorination system here. So we have a dual tank, dual pump system contained in the same area that the filtration unit used to be, and we've added ventilation as well as some walls to keep that separate from the primary mechanical and electrical processes. So the construction was completed in July this year, and we went online and it's operational. And we have had some issues with this as we've been operating. There's been some degassing issues, which results in airlocks of chlorination pumps, which results in fluctuating chlorine levels in the system. And so we've been solving those and adjusting the chlorination dose to start lowering it. So maybe more of an operational item, but we started off with a chlorine dose from the water plant itself at 2 milligrams per liter. And we've since July dropped that down to 1.3 milligrams per liter. We're monitoring it throughout the system to check out what the residual decay is and how persistent it is in the system. And we'll be making adjustments operationally as we go to try and find a happy medium of adequate amounts of chlorination without any minimizing the impacts to the customers. This is just some pictures of the finished system. So on the left here, we've added a wall up this right-hand side and hot water tank with mixing valves for our eye wash stations. And then we have a new spool of PVC or of stainless steel in here. This is where our injection quill is for our chlorination. Up to the top right, these are sine wave filters, part of the electrical. These were lowered down to the floor level against the new wall that was put in. The filters currently are used to take up this space. And then our transfer switch and the rest of our controls remain where they were. And then on this bottom picture here, we have the existing control panel and then our water quality monitoring stations over here. And you can see a front-on view of the injection quill, the new spool piece put in there. So
There's a question. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. Tyrone, what did you end up doing with those removed filtration tanks that came out of Blue River?
yeah, I didn't have enough room for a picture of that, but they are currently sitting at our yard down in Mission Flats. And they're tarped up. And we're looking at options to reuse them or potentially put them in a different system to address some of the other issues we have.
Okay, yeah, because Blue River. People around, I think.
Well, if you know anyone in Barrier that would like to purchase some backups, I'm listening.
Yeah, no, because they got one, they have 3 tanks that in Barrier, the same as you had 2 in Blue River. And one applicated within tank. I don't know if they can use that, but the one well utilizes. So maybe I should tell them. Talk to you about that.
Right, so what we have left here, whoops. We have these two tanks, they were emptied of the green sand, which was in them. They were intended for the manganese and iron removal.
Yeah.
And so all the piping as well that comes with them and the controls are all there. We have those sitting down in Mission Flats. And we have looked at alternatives for it. The one issue we have with it is that it's a significant amount of water required to backwash to regenerate. And disposing of that in most of our current water systems is very challenging. So
Yes, and they're equipped for the backwash. Because we put in all new backwash tanks to utilize that system. So maybe Bob or somebody from Barrier Systems should talk to you about.
yeah,
Because ours cavitated, it broke a hose inside that's cracked and they have a problem with the one tank and you don't utilize it for the system, but that would fit right in. I've been up there and I saw that they're exactly the same tanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Tyrone. If those get sold, who gets the profit? Or the money that might be left over because Blue River paid for those?
I do not know the answer to that one.
If you give them away, then you don't have to worry about it.
Well, surely they have some value.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it would go back to the system that paid for it. If there was any cost recovered, it'd go back towards capital.
yeah. Yeah, all of our utilities need money. Okay. Any other questions on the Blue River? I'll move on to our Paul Lake sewer system. So the board approved $109,000 for a communication upgrade on this wastewater system here. That communication upgrade is targeted at our lift station. So the communication between our lift station and our wastewater treatment plant. So the system was put in the mid to late 90s. No, not a lot of significant upgrades have occurred since then. This picture here is our current kiosk. So on the left-hand side, this is the original control system. So they use a capacitor bank on-off switches. We had one of these fail. We had pump number 2 system fail December 2020. Everything always happens at the best time of the year up there. So we put in a VFD to invert the from a single phase to a 3-phase to power the pumps. So now we are going to replace the entire control system in here, which would be this fancy silver box, as well as the controls for the second pump, and upgrade those to a newer standard. That at the same time, we do have a telemetry line that runs between the two locations that will be converted to a DSL line, which will allow us basically internet line between the two, which also allows us to get a VoIP phone down there. So Paul Lake does not have cell service when we are doing work on the lift station and the wastewater plant. It does often require what we call a gopher, someone to go run between the two systems to communicate with the guys. Turn this pump on, turn this pump off, right? Is working properly, it's not. So that's one of the intents there, as well as a safety factor so that our guys can call for assistance if they do require it there. So this gets into some of the challenges we've been having with supplies and supply chain. So we ordered these pumps in May 2022, and they were originally one pump, we were told, was 6 to 8 weeks away, and the second pump would have been 6 months. And then it went 10 to 12 weeks, and now we're expecting them to arrive December 9th. So we are, and this is a project that we're trying to, trying to be proactive on this, to get 2 pumps so that one of the remaining good ones is a backup. So we don't have to deal with a 6-month delay. And just to get to that point, we're dealing with these delays on this. So fortunately for us, our starter panels and the control panel and the communication devices are not delayed like that. There were some items that we ordered and they were 3 days out. So the long lead time items were the pumps on this project. So this is going to just extend this project longer is all. And then we have our automatic transfer switches. So again, 2021, we had CCBF approved for automatic transfer switch installations. We awarded a contract in June this year, and 3 of the 6 installations have been completed. So Savinaw, Del Oro, Wallachine, and we have the Loon Lake ATS was at I believe is the March board meeting that the funding was approved for that. So we have yet to order that one. And we've seen significant changes in prices for this kind of equipment. So we're just holding off on that for the time being. So this is a picture of the Savinaw transfer switch. And then we also have a connection box for our generator. This is the bottom side of the generator connection box. And what that allows us to do is to take our portable generator that we have, and utilizing the cables with color coded, just plug them in, green to green, red to red, blue to blue, black to black, white to white, and turn it on, make sure you have the correct voltage, and go. So
Director Schaefer?
Has one been installed in Vadenby yet?
yes, Vavenby has a transfer switch connector.
Yeah, we gave money to you a long time
Yes.
ago. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, so the transfer switches that we have purchased have been for systems that have not had them. So one or and then we also did not purchase them for systems that are under new construction. So Pritchard water, Black Pines water, they're not on the CCBF project. They are on their larger projects. So at the end,
Bill has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question on these pumps, Tyrone.
Yes.
Are a lot of those standardized type pumps, or is everyone separate so that we could start developing inventory within ourselves so that rather than if we have them all the same, like fire hydrants or anything else, then we could develop an inventory within our own system?
yeah, so these pumps are different than the ones we use in Pritchard. So we have two wastewater systems in the TNRD, Pritchard and Paul Lake.
Yeah,
So we have two pumps in Paul Lake and that's it. And that's two major pumps there. We have some smaller pumps, which are off the shelf items. These are our KSB pumps.
okay,
They have a different rail system that allows for removal without going into the tank than the pumps that we use in Pritchard. The thing, and I looked at retrofitting to the same type that we use in Pritchard, so we could have a stock. The issues we run into is that it's all hydraulic and pumping. It's different impeller sizes, trims, different horsepower, different voltages, depending on what you're lifting, the size of solids, whatnot. And so what we're trying to do and what we have done in Pritchard is we do have a spare pump for every duplex system in Pritchard. We have essentially 3 for 2 at that system, and that's the same intent we have here in Paul Lake. These pumps have also one of the pumps in the lift station currently is one of the original pumps. So it's from 1997, I believe. And if these new pumps are going to last 25 years, I'm okay with that.
yeah,
That's
No.
right. So it's one of those things that we had to weigh the costs of replacing and upgrading the entire station to match what else we have. If it was even possible. But the head pressures and the flows are vary significantly between our two systems. So.
yeah. No, I just thought some of them we might be able to standardize, and then otherwise we buy a different Ford and Chevy and Dodge and you never get parts to fit anyway, so thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so our transfer switches, the 3 are complete. We have 3 more to go, one of those being Loon Lake. And Evergreen is on the schedule next. And Maple Mission will be shortly after, so. And then getting into our other funding, the donations from Trans Mountain and Canfor. We did a pre-design, commissioned True Consulting to complete a pre-design report back in June for June. This is part of there was a grant intake that had opened and we were looking at options. And is also furthering our original master plans, which identified improvements for the systems. So our cost estimate on the draft report was about $5.3 million to build a filtration system similar to the Pritchard one for Vavenby. And I think it was 3 years ago when we applied for Pritchard, we were at 4.9 million. So costs have escalated significantly. And so we didn't move forward with the grant application on this. The funding wasn't there. But out of this draft preliminary design, we had some recommendations. So to further enhance it. And that one of those was to look at the environmental permitting summary. So what requirements are there for discharging backwash water to surface, to ground, and then the riparian area and other things like that. Then we also had geotech investigation for the building, so that the building design can also be completed, as well as the rapid infiltration basins. These 2 recommendations are scheduled right now. This draft design report came in significantly under budget. So we're using the remaining budget to further advance it and come up with a better product that's shelf grant ready and sitting on the shelf ready for the next large intake. And then the other one is archaeological work, which we really want to to get ahead on. We just don't have any pricing back on completing an AOA for this project. And that can be one of the biggest roadblocks that we have as far as timelines go for projects. So these 3 recommendations we're proceeding with. And end of October, we will be completing that geotech investigation in Vavenby at that site, donated by Mr. Fair.
For your AOA, is it because you don't have the money? Or
No,
what is it for?
the AOA is to look for any archaeological locations and do a preliminary archaeological assessment of the site. And we're just waiting on a firm quote from a company to complete that.
Is the money available for?
The money is available for it.
Oh, okay.
As based on
Is this,
historical numbers for that type of work, yes, the funding is there for it.
so pretty well, what are they looking for?
What,
What are we looking for in this archaeological work? What are we looking for? besides
potential,
dirt?
I'm not super familiar with it. They're looking for potential artifacts or traces of
Native?
indigenous artifacts in the area.
You'll find them at the garbage dump. I don't think you'll find them there.
Yeah. It's one of those pieces of the puzzle. It's nice to put in, get out of the way right away to see if there's any further work that needs to be done, because monitoring during construction can add up significantly. We want to make sure we account for that in a grant application. I'm assuming that the residents of Avonby can't afford a $5.3 million water plant on their own without grant funding, so. We want to make sure that we ask for the right and appropriate amount. And this was funded by the Trans Mountain Expansion Project donation as well as the Canfor Legacy donation, so. Any questions?
Probably asked most of them. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. And this is sort of a through chair to Scott. I'm just wondering if there's been any follow-up or feedback from the ministers' meeting for small water system funding from the province for communities under 500, which are all of our water systems and stuff, if there's been any since that.
Through you, Chair, nothing as of yet. I expect to see something into November is when I would expect to see something follow up from UBCM.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chair. Scott, going back to Blue River. Can you give me an update on the proposed generator?
I do not have an update on the proposed generator at this time.
Okay. My understanding is that Trans Mountain promised one. They have one in the yard, and when the camp is finished, they were going to give it to us, but it's kind of too big for what we need. And I'm not sure what discussions took place between Jake and Trans Mountain. Can you follow up on that
Yes, I can follow up on that for you.
for the new director?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tyrone, I was wondering on these mock bills that are going out, how are they working out in comparison to the bills that they're receiving? Are they higher or lower, or especially in Maple Mission? That's within my area. So I just wondered how that's working out.
I am going to cover a bit of that in the next presentation, but so far we haven't reviewed that yet. That's part of this fall's and winter work, is to review the rates and the rate structures to compare.
Okay.
I had the unfortunate experience of standing at the post office the other day when all the draft bills came out. And there was a lot of people in Savannah that were not happy. They say, this is twice what I've been paying. So, yeah, we need to find out whether that's in actual fact true or not. But then I should imagine a lot of it was irrigation through the summer.
That's correct. So the nice thing about flat rate billing is flat rate is it's the same rate no matter how much water you use. And water consumption varies throughout the season, throughout the year, season to season. With the mock billing or with the metered rate billing, then they will be paying more for more water they use, which is typically in the summertime irrigation season. However, the winter, when it's only domestic indoor water, that's when they'll see should see a significant drop in their bill from the, the Q3 bill should be, fair bit more than the Q4 bill. And that's the main reason we want to do 4 quarters of billing, so people can see over the course of 12 months what their average monthly rate would be and compare that to how the flat rate was. So yeah, that also goes into Director Kershaw's question about how do they compare so far. We have 2 quarters in one system and 1 quarter in the other systems to compare, and we don't have apples to apples yet. So
Okay, Steve, Bruce?
Thank you, Chair. This question just came to mind, given that fires and floods are sort of the rule and not the exception now in our area, and with them usually comes loss of hydro to some degree, certainly in my area, to a large degree for large amounts of time. And I'm just, my question, I guess, is how much is our mobile unit that we have? We have 1 mobile generator, is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay, so how much does that particular piece of equipment cost?
The piece of equipment's approximately $100,000.
So I'm just wondering if moving forward, if it might behoove us to look at that as a second mobile unit, just because our geographic area is so huge and the fires seem to encompass our entire area and stuff. And on that end, would community works funds even apply to that? So you could help. I doubt that. So it would have to come out of our budget and our tax dollars. But it's just something to think about, given our situations of the last, since the Elephant Hill Fire 2017, things have escalated quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah, so the intent with our mobile unit is to fill that gap in between the time that the outage occurs and the time we can secure a long-term rental
Okay.
for them. We also do have permanent units at some locations as well. So we're not looking at running a unit to 13 different utilities. We're looking at running it to 7. And so, yeah.
And to that end, not to interrupt you, but to that end, we could, there's an election going on at Cooksbury too. We could have that discussion down there in Spencer's Ridge again, possibly too.
Yeah.
On that note.
And as far as the funding for a portable generator goes, it doesn't qualify for CCPF.
Okay.
It comes out of our operational budget, which
Yeah.
I'm sure you're all aware of our
Yes,
issues
our
with that,
issues there.
so.
Yes, I am.
I would like to know, the Vimy Fire Department has a generator. Can that be moved if, Vimy has problems, can that be moved to use for the water system?
Yeah, I believe their generator is a pumping system as well. I'm not too familiar with that one. They'd have to look at the sizing of it and the connections for it. Right, and I've talked briefly with Phil, the fire chief, about it. There may be some potential there, but yeah, those are the. Right.
Okay, are you doing capital too? All right, sure. Mr. Hildebrand, is there any way that, or maybe it's just me, I'm having a hard time hearing the director's questions. Is it that because the microphones aren't turned up, or is it me?
We can try to turn it up, or else we can also have them to bring them closer to them or lean forward a little bit more, but I'll try to.
Well, I watched Stevie fix it up and puts it to his mouth.
That would be the extreme.
Yeah, right. Well, yes, I don't catch it all, but it could be me. Okay.
All right, the operations update. Is that volume better? Oh, perfect. Do you want me to go through the last one too? Okay, great. Okay, this one isn't as long as the capital projects update. I'll just go through what we discussed briefly at the last committee and any movement on those. An operator toolbox, which I always try and throw something newer in here. Some cool stuff that we're doing on the ground in the field. Then the highlights for our community systems and what's next for us. So the last committee we had introduced our new operations supervisor for utilities, Phil Goudreau. He recently departed the TNRD. He left last Friday, was his last day with us. He gave us plenty of notice, and we are currently and I guess eagerly interviewing and going through the process to find his replacement. So it's currently vacant. Our water metering project, leak detection. So we covered this a fair bit. Excuse me. In the capital and the operations updates the last few meetings, but pinpointing of leaks with meter data is our priority right now on these systems. And we're moving into the point where we're trying to locate non-revenue water. So the leaks, it's really easy to find the leaks on the public side downstream of the water meters. They do an excellent job of finding those. And now that we can collate all the data from what we're producing out of our source and what we are selling to our customers, we can determine what that gap is between the two, if any, and start working on that in our various utilities. Some key operational items for 2022 were the installation of 2 automatic flushing units. Again, this one is these are 3 to 4 months away. We ordered these up once we had the funding, and the one has just arrived, is still over at the suppliers ready for us to pick up. And now we have the joy of trying to schedule all this work before the snow flies and the frost hits. So, and the other ones, we don't have an update on when it will be delivered. So one of these is for Savin, one of these is for Loon Lake. And more tools for troubleshooting the systems. We were talking about the programs that we have for work orders for in the field, as well as the software that we have for tracking our flows like Beacon and WIMS that brings all the data together from our automated systems and our field collection systems. So, yes.
I have a question, but to Mr. Hildebrand. I'm assuming that the staffing piece is Jake that we're missing? No,
That we're missing, did you say?
yeah, the staff piece that's vacant.
No, that was Phil. The supervisor,
okay.
and I think you would have met Phil at a few meetings or one meeting.
Yeah, sorry. Did you fill the position that Jake left?
Jamie.
Okay, so that's,
Yeah,
so
and
we're still short one staff with utility.
in utility as a supervisor position, that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, no problem.
So our operator toolbox, this is, just wanted to give you guys an update on where our work orders and GIS are. So our GIS team has built this using some of the software that we already have in-house, what we call Workforce. This is an app. Right now, I'll show you the app portion of it that our staff have on their phones or tablets. They can use it on either or. You also use it on the computer as well, but it's more for in-office work. So what it provides here is when you open it up, you have a map of the entire system. And these are just screenshots from my phone yesterday when I was putting this together. And then you can drill down and you can see, okay, let's look at Savinaw, and you can see what is assigned, work orders assigned to individuals down here. When you open up the work order on your device, you have the map, these details. So this one is a curb stop repair and some descriptions. So excavate, lower, repair curb stop, replace if necessary, and then locating some other notes in there. So we get this in the office, we add it to the work order, and then the operators and the staff in the field can actually take some photos and upload them we can upload all of our call before you dig information onto here so that they have it all at their fingertips. And the other, one of the things that this does really nicely is it allows us to, in the field, to confirm what the information, if it's correct or not. So a lot of our GIS system is based on our as-built or record drawings that we've received from the multiple improvement districts previous to the TNRD taking over. And so pipe types may be unknown, the service line types may be unknown, the diameters, right, are assumed based on the drawings. And when we touch any of these assets, these underground assets, we can update that and confirm that or correct it. The GIS team, then there's also a field in here to flag it for GIS to update. And the GIS team will update that. And those updates are typically pushed through weekly for the main database for the TNRD. So it's been very helpful to get the information from the staff in the field. The guys, when they're in the ditch, covered in mud, doing, work to get to restore water, their notes, their old paper notes are often hard to discern. And that information doesn't necessarily get back to the GIS team and then be retained for future staff. So this has helped a lot with that. We're getting quite good buy-in from our staff. We've also rolled it out to our contractors, our contract operators out there, and they're using these tools as well. So, and this is a screenshot of what you can see when I'm on there from the desktop app or on the workforce, and it tracks and can trend all the work that we're doing, and it can help us see, are we doing a lot of service line repairs? Are we doing a lot of water main repairs? Are they curb stop repairs? What asset is failing, so that we can further inform our asset management program? And then we have a priority setting on here. So is it a low priority, high priority? The high priority ones are typically the guys that are on their way already as we're filling this in, and we're providing all the background data so that when they get to a Vavenby or a Blue River or Spence's Bridge where this leak is occurring, they have that at their fingertips. The medium priority stuff would be scheduled, a month, 2 months out. We have some of these that are in the planning stages from last year that we just haven't had to go ahead on it, or we may be waiting on, more often than not, waiting on materials or manpower to complete. We can put the description of the work again, which you can see on the apps on the mobile devices. We have two things. We have a work order and a checklist. The checklist is done for underground work so that they make sure the BC1 calls are completed. We're locating the underground utilities. It's helping us. It's a safety form essentially, where we're doing a risk assessment for all these underground operations. You can upload photos from the mobile devices and from the desktop, and you can also add files to it. So we also use this for our water service on-off requests. When people are heading south for the winter, they'll call in or email us, say, I'd like my water turned on or turned off. This same program, different tab, allows us to input that info. The staff look at it every morning, see, okay, I'm going to be in Wallachine today, and there's 2 service on-off requests to do. They can go in there, they can either take a signature from the owner in the field, or we have the form, the submission updated or uploaded to this, so they know what they have to do.
Yes, thank you, Chair Tyrone. This is really cool, by the way. It's not only going to save time, it's going to save money, and mapping is badly needed in some of these older communities and stuff like that. My question is, so when you're out there and you're putting in, you thought it was a 4-inch line and it's a 6-inch line, so you can change it on the fly like that and get that accurate mapping in there. Is there sort of an entry point to where you put in there, say you find a coupler that was a previous repair or something like that, that you can add in there? Because I think that is important. A lot of these older communities, they've had T's that gone off that no, it's not on the mapping and stuff like that, like in Spence's Bridge. I'm sure we're not the only community like that. So I'm just wondering if there's that little box that says additional remarks or something like that.
There is a field for additional remarks.
Okay,
The couplers, joints,
Yep.
things like that, we typically don't mark.
okay,
We only get to a certain component level, we call it. T's.
Yeah.
We will have on
Okay.
here. If we come across a T that was unknown, we will put it in here. And it's evolving. We have a GIS team that we work with. And they constantly are asking, not in a good way, constantly asking us for areas that we would like to see it improved. What are the pain points with this software? And that, what fields do we want in there? Do we have far too many types of fittings? Do we need so we've basically gone to basic fittings, sizes and material type. And then that's, that this is phase 2 of updating our assets. So. And just for your information, the Spence's Bridge staff and Cooks Ferry staff do have access to this as well, so. Yeah. All right, I'll get into the water system highlights then. So in Blue River, we had I think we have this on every second committee meeting. Someone hits a fire hydrant in one of our communities. This guy decided to park on top of it. I should say this person. I don't know who the drivers were. I did cut out most of the picture as I'm in the back with the ambulance. Looks like the airbags went off too. Not a pleasant strike, I don't imagine. So this will go through ICBC will cover this, similar to the incident we had in Savinaw, I believe, a year and a half ago. Yeah. Anyways, so again, we're running into issues. Actually, this thing is still laying there, bent over right now, waiting for us to repair it since July. We've dealing with the claim has added some time to it, trying to find a contractor to go up there and actually replace it. It's fairly involved to replace a hydrant that was broken off or damaged like this. You don't know if the thrust block is in one piece, and getting concrete poured in Blue River is not the easiest thing to do. So the logistics of replacing these things adds time, not to mention that hydrant, the hydrant itself, the replacement hydrant is 8 to 10 weeks away. So we're expecting that. We expect this to be replaced in November before the winter really occurs in Blue River. So they might be working in the snow, but the ground won't be frozen. And we will contract this work out. And then the Trans Mountain Expansion Camp in Blue River did connect to our community water system right around the same time that we turned the chlorination system on, which actually was a benefit to the camp as well, that we were chlorinating our system. So IHA required them to chlorinate their camp, and they got to turn off their booster skid once they connected to our water system. We also meter the camp, and we have a shut off for them as well. So this bottom picture is just a very brief picture of that meter and the back pressure or the backflow valve assembly that we have in there, feeding the camp. So again, this is also on our beacon system. We also invoice them for the water use, and we can track the water use as well and adjust their fill times and periods to accommodate the communities. So what their camp does is they fill up a couple essentially cisterns, and then with booster pumps similar to what we installed in Evergreen a couple years ago, distribute that throughout all their camp buildings. So we can adjust when they fill those tanks and if it's going to impact our system or not. So.
Thank you, to the chair to Triumph. How much are we charging Trans Mountain for that connection? Is it by a cubic meter or?
Yes, so the agreement is based on our bylaw, on our rates bylaw for bulk water, which I believe is $4 per cubic meter.
Okay, and the second question is they have been taking water from a hydrant by the Husky. And I understand they're being billed for that. Is that the same amount?
Yes, so any contractor that would like to take water, bulk water for whatever purpose from a hydrant or any community water system can apply to us for a bulk water use permit and authorization. And then we will assess the demand that would apply onto the system. It's a temporary demand, but there may be, we don't want 17 trucks all from, or 17 different companies all at once filling up on the same time from different hydrants. So it allows us to schedule that and examine that. And yes, they are, when we updated the rates bylaw, we included a bulk water fee. So there's a meter rate rental of $100 per week, and then a cubic meter charge of $4 per cubic meter. So yeah.
So the only suggestion I would make now that the camp is turned on and they've got, maybe they should be taking that bulk water for their tanker trucks from the camp rather than the hydrant, because the snow's coming.
Yeah, and that's a thing that we're keeping an eye on with Don, our operator up in Blue River, and the weather, and to see we don't want to provide bulk water from hydrants in freezing months. So
Yeah. So that's an option for them to still get their water.
technically, no. Our bylaw prohibits water from being carried off the site to be used elsewhere. So we can't have a customer set up a bulk water fill station and sell the water that they get from the community.
Interesting. Thank
Without,
you.
yeah, without authorization from us, approval.
Thank you.
Loon Lake water system. So Loon Lake is another one that has is lacking in cell service. And we've been running our SCADA system. So that's our, the controls and getting all the data back from the online monitoring and the pumps and everything. Through a Galaxy broadband satellite link. And Starlink came out, and I was thinking this would be a pretty great spot for Starlink. There's no data limits on Starlink, and the bandwidth and the speeds are much greater than the older satellite technology. So we installed the Starlink up there in this. This is the actual Starlink on the left that was installed, sitting in our shop. And then this larger gray satellite here is what we used to run. Now we piggyback, or there's two uses for this link, and one of those is for the water system connection. The other one is for the 911 service up in the area. And we were limited to how much data we were allowed to use, and we were overaging. Had overages every single month. We use more than 2 gigs of data for a water system, or for water system communications. With the unlimited data with Starlink, we've eliminated that cost, and that alone covers the cost of the Starlink monthly fee. And we installed it, I think the day after we installed it, our communications provider contacted us asking if had we put this in yet. And I said, yeah, we put it in yesterday. Said we'd love to try and run the 911 system on it, because there's issues coming with the Galaxy satellite that they use from that location. So it was a great timing, and it's been functioning great. We have the app on our phone that we can actually check the communication and the field of view with this Starlink. It's great. Yeah, it's been fantastic for us up there and improving that. So Pritchard seemed to be one of our fun locations again this year. We had quite a few leak repairs, and I was sending the crew out for another one the other day, and we were just chatting about it. And I said, since I've been here, I've tracked 16 separate service leaks in Pritchard since I've been here in just over 4 years. And one of the staff that's been here for 15, he's like, that's pretty standard ratio, 4, 5, 6 a year kind of thing. So what we're seeing is that we have a lot of cracked services, broken fittings, corroded saddles. They're typically this time now, they are on the service near the saddle. So this is a saddle here that's all corroded, rusted, and has broken. And this is the water main, the AC main here. This is the service saddle on it. There's a hole tapped into the main. The corp stop comes off of the saddle. And then the service line goes from the corp stop to the curb stop, which is the property line or the meter pit right there. And so this is what we found. And a leak on that can be 1,000 to 1,500 liters per hour. Which on a system like Pritchard, Blue River, Savanaugh, isn't as noticeable as a system like Maple Mission or Evergreen, where you have 20 customers or 16 connections. It doesn't seem to matter. We have 19 millimeter 3/4 inch services at the majority of our sites. And that leak is the same no matter how big the site is. So we've been doing a fair bit of these repairs. And then Bostock Road and Jarla Road are the common areas that we were called to this year. So this is the repair after once it was complete. So this one was actually an abandoned service. They had, I believe they had consolidated 2 or amalgamated 2 properties and abandoned this service. And this was leaking underground with no indication that there was a service even here. So we found some very old record drawings or as-bills that indicated that there's a service there. We were kind of scratching our heads. Why is this water coming up from here? Pritchard also has a nice layer of clay that keeps a lot of the runoff of, very, very close to the surface. And so we just threw a repair saddle on this. You can see down in the hole here on this AC pipe and done. So it does take a while for some of these leaks to show up. And this is again, one of those, the water meter advantage that we have. If we're pushing out more water to the reservoir than we're recording going to the customers, we know that we have a leak somewhere, and then it's a matter of trying to detect that, which is then the fun art/science of leak detection. So moving on to Savanaugh. Earlier this spring, we reinstalled our high lift pump 2, so to crane it in. It was rebuilt and it's been running well since. This pump was one of the upgraded pumps, but the motor was one of the original motors that was done a few years before. There was an imbalance in there that caused some leakage of some oil in there, and we addressed it prior to it catastrophic failure. So we ran a Savanaugh community water system on 1 vertical turbine all summer without issue. And now we have both of them there ready for the next season. We installed some new water services in Savanaugh. There were some properties that were unserviced that we provided services for. These ones happen to come off the back alley. And you can see that the fence was removed here off the laneway, and the services were put in, one there and one over here. So we're seeing more and more, seems like we're seeing more and more of this. When haven't been here that long, but first year, I think we put 1 new service in the last 2 years, we've put probably a dozen services in for the expansion and people, infilling and whatnot. So Spence's Bridge, we had a leak. We were notified of a leak on the corner of Station Street and Bridgeway, just down from the old bridge there. Turned out to be a cracked service line. The interesting part of this is that in Spence's Bridge, our wells, our source doesn't have a huge capacity, and we pump at a fairly low rate, about 5 liters per second. So when that leak occurred, like I said, they're 1,000 to 1,500 liters per hour. We can see what our reservoir levels do. This is an indication of a leak, right? And there was water surfacing on the street. So that's the impact that 1 leak on that 1 service can have on a small system. So, and then I know I said previously that our meter project was complete, but now it definitely is. So we had 1 outstanding meter pit installation on the North Frontage Road in Spence's Bridge. We had some issues accessing it for a while, sorted that out, and then went in there this fall when we had our crew back, And installed, you can see our little tiny meter lid there. So 6 feet down, meter pit, done. Last one. Last of the old, I should say. I'm sure there'll be some new ones going in at some point, so. Wallachine. We had some fun in Wallachine this year. We had an intake pump failed, so we had we lost the pressure in the system. Sorry, I shouldn't say we lost all pressure in the system, but the loss of pressure on the discharge of the intake was indicated that our pump had failed. So we had to issue a boil water notice because we switched over to Jimmy's Creek, our backup water source there. And then this pump had not been pulled for quite some time out of the intake. We have a single intake into the Thompson River in Wallachine, and a single pump. We have a spare pump, not a spare motor. Spare motor was, I don't know, 4 hours away. We picked that up, went to pull the existing pump and sled, and the cable broke. So that thankfully we have a backup water source in Wallachine that we were able to run on, and we're actually running on it again right now. Allows us time to correct some of the issues here and replace the cable. When these are all flanged together because of the high pressure, so there's 8 to 10 bolts per connection. Every 6 meters, there's 8 to 10 bolts to undo, which are corroded and rusted. And it also happened at a time when our tools, the primary tools that we use for this job were stolen from our compound. So the guys were doing this the old-fashioned way with hand tools and having a great old time. So we had, thankfully, with that backup water source, we had time to address this and get it corrected. At the same time, we have the reservoir cover that is getting up to 20 years old. And we had in this reservoir, we have these inspection hatches, which are, they have like these plastic flanges on the bottom, which have actually finally broken off. And these, what would happen, there's a drain on top of the cover. And this is all raw water, pumped directly from the river and then fed back down into the community, filtered and chlorinated and out. So around these inspection hatches, the water was seeping through there and essentially coming out there and through the drain as fast as we could pump it. So we basically came up with a temporary repair, which looks like this. We were scratching our heads for a few hours. What can we use? So we had originally put, when the failure started, we had put inner tubes under here. We talked to the supplier of these HDPE covers, and they said just put an inner tube underneath that area, pop it up, keep it above the water level, and you're good to go. So we had done that. It lasted about 2 years, and then they finally cracked off. And so what we did is we had some leftover, we had some cedar in the yard, and we built a little raft underneath. So to actually lift it, all we had to do was float it enough with those 2x4s to keep that opening above the water level, to keep the water from spilling out on there and keep the water below the cover where it should be rather than flooding out. So this is a little tiny snippet I took that just overlaid on the old picture, but it's pretty much, it was what it looks like. Now we put a couple covers over top of those openings to prevent any too much stuff from getting into accessing the reservoir, but that's our temporary repair. And our next step is to complete an option assessment, because pumping raw water into a reservoir, storing it, and then treating it down below on demand is very challenging with the fluctuating flows. So that's our next step is to do that, complete that options assessment. So what's next? So at the last committee, we were requested to review our water system acquisition and sustainability strategy. So that is something that's on my list for this fall and winter, to review best practices and other regional districts, other municipalities, and what they're doing for that. So our strategy is a collection of policies that govern our acquisition as well as our sustainability and the operations of our system. So we'll be reviewing those and bringing a report back. And then rate setting and review, this goes back to Director Kershaw's question earlier, but our mock billing has started. We need to establish the rates for Loon Lake. And reviewing the rates and revenue for the current systems is on the list for this fall. Yeah, that's what's next. And that's the end of that presentation. Any questions?
Yeah, Tim, what is it that has actually been decided about Loon Lake? Like, I don't know how many people are there on a full-time basis, but it seems to me it's very little.
Yeah, so I believe we one, maybe two full-time residents in Loon Lake. There's 52 connections in Loon Lake, and I believe about 40 of those are active a season. So trying to sort out an appropriate rate structure for that is going to be challenging, but it's on the list now that we are into the mock billing and want to move away from flat rates. So.
And can we not come up with a season rate? Like, can we not come up with something that goes between April and October, and then they don't get charged anymore, except, I mean, no, they're obviously not there pumping water. So why can't we, if that was different than all the rest anyway, so why can't we just do a half year for them? So for half a year, they pay the same rate as everybody else, and at the other half of the year, they get shut off.
Yeah, so our water rates are different for each utility, each system.
Yeah,
So it's not necessarily the same rate for as everyone else, but we have fixed costs, and then we have variable costs. So we still sample the water every week throughout the winter, even if it's one person or 40 people, 40 connections up there, we still have those costs for our contract operators for water sampling, for electricity to heat the building. In the summertime, it'll be electricity to pump more water. Chemicals, right? We still have all that work up there. Trying to figure out what that rate should be and what the split between fixed and variable costs, which we achieve right now by using a base rate. So if you have a certain size meter, you have a fixed rate for that, and then you pay for the volume on top that you use. Figuring out whether that maybe is an 80% split, 80% to fixed, 20% to variable, so that is a constant fee, right? Our main thing is to make sure that we have the same revenue or similar revenue to what we do now with flat rate as we do with metered rates. So,
but it's the one system that we've had considerable criticism on, and from the people that live there. And surely to goodness, we can make some kind of an assessment that helps that community. If you only got 2 people living there full time, there's got to be some other way that you can manage it. That's my opinion. And in the meantime, Carol wants.
Couple things, talking about Trans Mountain. Do you have an agreement with them to take water out of Avonby?
yes, so our agreements aren't necessarily with Trans Mountain, but with their
with
contractors. Yeah,
Or whoever?
I think the bulk water permit right now for Vavenby is with Cyclone Hydrovac, which may be a sub to Bannister or to whoever, but any vehicle or any equipment that is taking water from a system has to have a permit. They have to be able to produce that if asked upon request. Otherwise, they're not authorized to take water from there. So
Is it an authorized? I mean, is it on the honor system?
as far as
Taking the water, how do you know how much water they're taking?
yeah, we're trying to establish a meter, an adequate meter for each hydrant. We've built these portable meter kits. Our issue with them is that the meters that we've used have failed because of the volumes or the velocity of the water going through them. So we need to upgrade those to actual hydrant meters, which gets a little bit more expensive. But right now we have a fairly good relationship with the contractors that are using the water, and they provide us the amount of truckloads and what their truck handles. So They don't tell us that they take a half load. They tell us they've taken 6 trucks. Each truck holds 12 cubic meters. We do the math on that. And the assumption is that they're taking full loads.
So it's like an honor system.
It's, yes,
Yeah.
with some monitoring as well, and spot
Yeah.
checks.
The other thing is, I didn't see Vavenby up there, but I mean, we had our Trans Mountain banister. Did that all got fixed properly, the water leak we had, and we had to shut the water off because they blocked
Yes.
our main?
They got fixed. Myself and another guy were up there for that one.
Directors, do you have any more questions for Tyrone? Okay,
I just want to ask about the review of rate. Because we just did the rates when we got the water, before water meters. And that, and it's based on the water meters. Are you looking at increases? Because when they went to all these community meetings, they said there would be no increase. So now if you're coming back less than a year later saying, yeah, there might be increases.
So the review that we're doing, those rates were modeled off of historical water use without knowing individual water use. So the review that we're doing now is to see how close we were with that modeled rate to what is our revenue or compared to what it was with the flat rate. So that's the mock billing period. And then if we have to adjust the rates, we will. The intent has always been not to increase the rates other than by inflation or the standard creep that we have. I think we factored in over our 5-year plan, the 2 to 2.5%. Other than that increase, not to go and say, well, we need to put away more reserves, so we're going to do a 30% increase for Vavenby. It's always been, this is the amount that we've collected through flat rates for the customers. And with the metered rate, we should be collecting that same amount for that community. It may be more for some customers, less for others, but it's the same amount overall for that community. So that's what the review will be doing for the rates, is make sure that we've set them correctly before we flip over and get away from our flat rates and go to our metered rate.
So if you have to increase them, you're coming back to community meeting to explain to the people again?
Yeah, we could do that. Once we complete the review, come to this committee, we'll see what it looks like. Because I think the answer to that question would depend on what level of change there is, how big the impact would be. And then we determine from that. So I appreciate if we're having, and hopefully this is not the case, but if we're having to drastically change the rates, then that would warrant going back to the community. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a comment and a question. One of the reasons that we went to meters was to detect leaks and to encourage conservation. So on that basis, if people use a lot, they're going to pay a lot. But the actual question is just general. A lot of our water systems are on wells. Is any monitoring being done of the aquifers that those wells are in? We know that a good portion of BC is in a drought right now. And do we do any monitoring, or does the province do any monitoring of the status of the aquifers that everybody's water is coming from?
Yeah, so we do have well level monitors in our wells. In Blue River, we have 1 for the 2 wells. In Spence's Bridge, we have 3, 1 in each individual well. Maple Mission, we have a level sensor in there as well. And then the Black Pines wells will also be monitored. So we are monitoring our drawdowns that way. And the province will notify us of drought periods. And if what they're looking at with those letters that they would send out would be to restrict our water license allotments. So they would say you can only use up to 60% at different levels of drought. But they do look at community water systems as being one of the last ones that they restrict. So we've yet to have any communication from the province on that.
Yeah, just real quick, well, maybe not real quick, but it's maybe a 2-part question. Thank you, Chair. So are you confident first of all, that the mock billing is going to put you in a place where the numbers for each individual water system, I'm imagining you might have to adjust some, and but maybe not. And that said, we had a discussion around the board table that, maybe a year after the water meters got working, we would come back to the board. And we would look at those numbers again to see, as we have always talked about, that they're sort of staying at the same level that they were before, or close to it. But it does put a lot of work, I would think, on your table because of the individual water systems and stuff like that. But is that still the vision, even with the mock billing that's going on now, to have another year's worth of actual billing where the people know what they're paying, and they will, because the mock billing is one thing, but when you're actually writing the check out, that's another thing.
So our mock billing, we have to mock bill for 4 quarters before we can switch over from flat rate to metered rate. And then the second part of that is that our rates bylaw is only for a 2-year period. So, or it may have been for a 3-year period, 2022 being one of those. So it will be up for a new rate after. So at that point, we will have enough. It's essentially your 1-year mock billing, 1 year of actual billing, see where everything falls, bring it back. That has to be board approved anyways. So there'll be, yeah. Okay. That's what I'm here for.
Do any of you have new business? Okay, Steve, go ahead.
And this is not really new business, and it's a comment I wanted to make, and then I didn't when Jamie was speaking, but I just wanted to applaud our staff for not only making that committee the 8 people that have water systems into it, but moving forward, I've had some conversations, and I think we're moving. Committees have been always appointed by the chair sort of willy-nilly. I say that not to the chair, but just that's the way it's been done since I've been here. You put in your name, I want to be on utilities and waste management and whatever, the policy committee, and you may or may not get it. There's no rhyme or reason for it. So I'm hoping moving forward, those chair appointed committees will have you at least have a sentence or two of what your value to that committee will be, because this, I feel, is the beginning of a better way to form committees. If you have a capital project in your area that's funded by the taxpayers and you want to be on that committee, to me, that's a no-brainer. You should be on that committee because you're going to have to answer questions to your constituency. So I just want to do a shout out to staff. That was, I think it's a good direction. We should have been going a long time ago, and I'm really happy to see that we're going in that direction now. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions or new business of any kind? Steve?
I believe there's a new terms of reference for the Utilities Committee coming up on the board meeting tomorrow. Am I
It is.
correct? Which addresses Director Rice's question.
Through the chair to Director Quinn, I think Director Rice, correct me if I'm wrong, was just making a comment about the
Oh.
changes and just the
Okay.
positive changes, but this committee terms of reference will go for approval to the board now that the committee's endorsed it to the new board in November, because we won't be able to get it on the agenda for tomorrow.
Thank you. Question, new business. So from the chair, I would like to thank staff. You have been great to me as the chair. I have been chair of this committee for some years, and it certainly has been challenging to me, and I know a lot of things about water systems. You will be missing at least 3 of us on your committee that know all about water systems. So I would just really appreciate you letting the rest of your staff know how much I appreciate the help that they've given me over the years. Certainly Scott and Deanna. Have a motion to adjourn, please.